Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cinema A to B. Ben and I are going to be talking about today about Spielberg's 1993 film, Jurassic Park. Ben, let's dive right in.
Yeah, buddy. So I guess if you consider 1989's Batman like a summer blockbuster, that's my first summer blockbuster that I recall seeing in a theater. But if you want to get really, really technical, I think this qualifies as the first like mega blockbuster that I ever saw in a cinema. So I would have been 11 and we were at the beach in the Outer Banks, and it was one of those rainy days in the OBX. It occasionally happens. And so we all went off to the theater. Of course, everybody's jaw was on the floor. Never seen anything like it. And revisiting it, it holds up. I mean, and surprisingly, it holds up in ways that I really wouldn't expect, you know, with some of these computer generated effects. I think that's kind of what my mind first jumps to is, how is this stuff now over 30 years old holding up really relatively well? And when I go back and watch it, it's just these, even the first shot when Grant and the rest of them see the dinosaurs for the first time, there's almost a painterly like element to the way the visual effects look. They almost look like moving matte paintings. There's a bit of artistry here going on. And then I'm sure just the limitations of the software that work out, but this one still stands the test of time as like this industry standard. This in Terminator 2 from just a couple years prior. I feel like this style of movie making lasted like about a decade, maybe 15 years. And the last collection of movies that I feel like use this technique of like, let's get as much as we can in camera, and then we'll just pepper in some visual effects, some computer generated effects, would be the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
And then really after that, you start to see the overdependency on the computer. And
I think some of it goes to interrupt you. I think some of it, because I remember like reading about things where computer generated this kind of visual effects were super expensive. It was much cheaper to do the practical effects. But then as time went by, computers got cheaper, those kind of things. It's completely flip-flopped. It's so much easier and cheaper just to do it all CGI than to do the practical effects. So I can see why they made that switch, because they're trying to save a buck and so much easier.
Well, and you're talking about the render times at this time in 93.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, the fact that they even had the computing power to render digital shots of dinosaurs at, I'm thinking probably 2K resolution. The idea that they could even do that with the computers in 93 kind of blows my mind.
I think we had like Pentium 100s or something like that.
It's kind of, it really reminds me of the fact that we used like low level computers to go to the moon.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, really, how do these computers work exactly? But I would say the strength of this film, though, is not really the visual effects. It's twofold. It's a really, really brilliant adaptation of an excellent book, which I want to get into some of the differences between the novel and the film. So it's a really good script, really good adaptation, and then you absolutely have peak Spielberg directing this film. So you combine these things, and this is for me an all-timer. I don't know where I rank it. It doesn't sit in my top 10, but I know a couple people that this is their favorite movie ever. Like, I can't name who they are offhand, but I've had those conversations. Like, just offhand, what's your favorite movie? Jurassic Park. And I'm like, nice choice.
Yeah.
Excellent choice.
You can't disagree with that.
No.
I absolutely think it's amazing. I'm with you. This is for me, the first that I saw in the theater that was the summer blockbuster I can remember. And I can remember it was one of the first like PG-13, because this was PG-13, wasn't it? It wasn't PG.
Yes, it is PG-13.
Yeah.
Yep.
The first one where I was able to see it without my parents going to see it first and then allowing me, like, so I got to walk in, we got to experience it together. And of course I was huge into dinosaurs, right? You know, back then. So I really loved it. I mean, my grandfather was a paleontologist. I'd gone on dinosaur digs. And so like really big into dinosaurs. And so seeing this was just a dream come true. And I just recently watched this the last couple of weeks. And I got to tell you, I felt the same way, where it still hits, and everything just works. It just looks so much better. I feel like they took the time because the CGI was so expensive, or because they were so sparing with it. They took the time to try to blend it as well as possible and use it minimally. They wanted to put as much in shot and much with, the not stop motion, but with creatures and with, what am I trying to say?
Animatronics.
Like models. Yeah. Well, they did some animatronics. Yeah, obviously some animatronics. They actually, fun fact, they tried to actually do it stop motion. So Phil Tippett, who from Star Wars fame, RoboCop fame, they were going to do everything stop motion, and Phil Tippett and stuff went to ILM, and they were just kind of working on the CGI stuff because they had done Terminator 2 stuff. And Spielberg saw what they did of just this quick little thing of like a T-Rex running through the desert, and just both Tippett and Spielberg jaws dropped on the floor, and Tippett utters this. Well, this is what the article said, but uttered this line and basically said, I'm going to go extinct. And Spielberg loved that line that he edited into the movie. So I absolutely adore this movie. It's not in my top 10, but this is probably either second or third of my favorite Spielberg films of all time. Like, I absolutely adore this film. It is a masterpiece, I would say, and just getting, character build, arcs of building tension, releasing tension, pacing. Like, there's no fat on this, really, in my opinion. Like, this is perfectly timed. I wouldn't trim anything. There's not really anything that pulls me out of the film or makes me go, that dialogue didn't work. Like, it all just works. Like you said, this is peak Spielberg. This is absolutely, he's at the top of his game, just killing it. And this movie shows, like,
yeah, and the fact that he releases this the same year as Schindler's List is just nuts, and basically shot them back to back.
Yeah,
which is just exhausting to even think about. You're right. This is that window. I don't know how long I would say it lasted, because Spielberg almost had like two peaks. Like one right out of the gate with Jaws, and then Close Encounters and
Raiders.
E.T., Raiders, and then kind of has a lull there where he's still making really good films, but they're just not at the same caliber. But then in the late 80s, he starts to pick it back up. You do Last Crusade, you have this. So he kind of had two really just master level eras, and this is right in the middle of kind of that second run.
Yeah.
Now I did kind of mention the differences with the book. The tone of the book is very different. I should state that, and people that have read it know that it's a much, much darker piece of work. Pretty much R-rated if they did a direct adaptation, not particularly family friendly, even more violent than this. Man, if they would have made like a direct adaptation of the book, obviously it would have probably been a 3.5 hour movie, and then the budget would have ballooned to like, I don't know, $400 million, because things that show up in some of those sequels are in the first book.
Yeah.
You have multiple T-Rexes. I think they kill one with a law rocket, if I'm not mistaken. The whole sequence with the pterodactyls in Jurassic Park 3 is in the first book, where they're in the boat. And then I forget the actor's name, but in the Lost World, the guy that gets killed by the little dinos that numb you, and they eat you while you're alive, well, they don't numb you, they paralyze you, and then they eat you while you're alive, you're aware of it. That's how Hammond dies in the book. He doesn't make it to the helicopter. He's not a nice man in the book. He's horrible, which is probably the biggest change from the book to the movie, is that Hammond goes from this like really cold, calculating industrialist in the book who doesn't care about his grandkids or anything, to a guy that you sort of like put up with, and he's just sort of this wayward visionary played by Attenborough. So it's like it's an interesting decision that Spielberg makes to not make him the main. He basically is a villain in the book.
Crichton made him out to be like an evil Walt Disney.
Yeah.
And basically Spielberg turned him into like P.T. Barnum, so.
Yeah, pretty much. So there's some big changes, but I don't, that is not an issue for me. I don't decry that. It's just, it's interesting to see how they adapted it for a much wider audience. and didn't really lose the soul of the book. And it's an excellent read. And it's at some point, my guess is down line, one of the big streamers will do a limited series probably of Jurassic Park in a more faithful rendition to the very dark, bleak book.
So fun fact, there was actually a moment when James Cameron was going to be attached to this. He was actually like trying to bid on it, and he was going to, coming not right off of Aliens, but basically having done Aliens, he was like, it was going to be much more violent, dark film.
Cameron would have been perfect for a direct adaptation of the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tone of the movie is much more Aliens than what we get. Yeah.
But having read the book, watched the movie, I do love Spielberg's take on it. And
yes.
It's so much more of something to go back to and enjoy and consume. And I think there was a lot of wonder and a lot of just awe-inspiring stuff that this movie brings about that would have been dampened by a much more violent film. I think this kind of has that especially the typical kind of movie, bring your imagination, anything can happen. It was like, this is the first time we really saw true non-stop, stop motion dinosaurs on screen in the same frame as human actors and actually looked real. Yeah. And I remember just being absolutely blown away. And again, like, this was just absolutely awe-inspiring. So I got to say, like, I really love what Spielberg did. And I love that he tried to do as much practical effects as well. Cause like there's things that we saw happen like in the prequels when Lucas was doing everything green screen. It's harder for actors to interact or to bring things in when you don't have anything to react to. Like we talked about it kind of when we did, oh my goodness, what's the bombers in World War II that we just did? Masters of the Sky. We talked about Masters of the Sky.
Masters of the Air.
All right, Masters of the Air. When they were actually in the bubble where they had the bombs going off, that is so much easier to react to. You have something like, so when they're sitting on the Triceratops, and the belly's going up and going down his breathing, like you could see kind of that joy in the actor because she was actually truly experiencing it. And it was so much easier to kind of transform that emotion and take that and project that, as opposed to just going, I'm imagining being like you can obviously do it, but it's just so much more.
Yeah. And that, if I'm not mistaken, that's one of those instances, because Spielberg's genius as a director isn't just his vision. He knows all the tricks on how to manipulate's not the right word, but how to get the most from a lot of his actors. Mm-hmm. And in that instance with the Triceratops that was pregnant, there's like no rehearsal there because he wants her reaction to be authentic when I believe that's like the first time they're probably seeing the animatronic. Mm-hmm. And so he's getting more of a genuine like wow moment from his actors seeing that massive prop. As much as they can do that in this movie, they do. It's tougher because as the movie progresses, the action sequences get more intense. And so there's less opportunity to have the animatronics do what you need them to do. Although obviously famously, and this, our listeners probably know this, that the T-Rex coming in through the skylight or moonroof of the Explorer was not supposed to happen that way. The animatronic malfunctioned and it came in further into the Jeep, the Explorer, than it was supposed to. And so the terror from the two kids is real. And it was a total screw up, and it kind of put them in danger because that thing weighs quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was not supposed to get that far into the vehicle that it did. And it punched right through that piece of plexi right down into them. And but that's the take we get. And so the terror is real. There's no acting going on there because that just wasn't supposed to happen. I find it really interesting that one of the most intense moments in the entire film for me doesn't even involve a dinosaur. It's that Explorer perched up in the tree after it's gotten kicked off by the T-Rex, and it's coming down. This tree can't support this vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it isn't just the dinosaurs that are lethal in this space. It's like nature is just after everybody.
Yeah.
That's just like a battle against gravity and physics. And But that scene always like was really intense for me. And then the other one is the power line, the grid, and I still love Sam Neill grabbing that. The comedy moments in this are kind of underrated. When he totally punks that kid.
Yeah. Freaks them out. I love
Joseph Mazzello as Tim. By the way, I love that Mazzello showed up later in the Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then clearly Spielberg's got it for lawyers.
He does.
Because the lawyer jokes start really early in the movie and then continue in the final culmination of
him being
of Gennaro getting eaten. Yeah.
On the toilet.
But I love the line, "Hey, when you gotta go, you gotta go." Because he leaves those kids and runs out. Yeah. And I believe that's Goldblum's line.
Yeah. He's like, because Sam Neill's like, "Where's he going?" He's like, "Hey, when you gotta go, you gotta go." Oh, yeah, because it's early. Like Attenborough, right when he meets Sam Neill's character and Laura Dern, he's just like, because do you like lawyers? I hate lawyers. I forget exactly what the phrase is, but he immediately is talking bad about lawyers.
Yep.
And calls him the blood-sucking lawyer. He's like, the only person who's on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer.
We're going to make a fortune with this place.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have a coupon day,
Yeah.
It's such terrible. Oh, so I got to say, there is so much moments of intense, not terror, but just, again, this is where Spielberg shows he is a master of creating tension, of creating that suspense, of kind of making you as the viewer feel it or be into it, like, because when you like the first kind of like, I was noticing this time, like the first time you hear the T-Rex roar, you are inside the SUV, right? With everybody. Yeah. It's not outside. So it's very much you're internalizing kind of what the actors are feeling or what the characters are feeling in the movie. And he just does these brilliant moments. I mean, even the beginning where the guy gets eaten, you never really see the dinosaur, just gives it that much more terror of what is in that box. Like, why is this so dangerous? Why are they doing it this way? Like, and the fact that there was, 40, and just the moment of like them all standing there watching the trees as the trees are moving and you're like, crap, what's coming? What is happening? And all of a sudden it just comes through and it's the crane or the truck with the cage on it. And they're like, oh, okay. So then your attention goes down, but then it gets immediately ratcheted up again.
Right.
It's just, he's brilliant at that kind of continuing that flow of up, down, giving you moments to kind of rest just to bring you right into another moment of absolute terror.
Yeah. And I've mentioned it before when we've done another Spielberg film on the pod with Saving Private Ryan, but it's worth mentioning again because this film does it even more. Spielberg's the master at telling you how to feel as a viewer, and he does it with his actors, and he shoots them up close when they see something either incredible or terrifying, usually terrifying, or awe-inspiring, or whatever it is. And this movie does it from the very beginning. He holds on Sam Neill before you even see what it is he's looking at, and he takes his hat off, and he holds on him forever.
Yep.
And then you finally see it. You finally see the herd of dinosaurs off in the distance, and then you see, what is it, like a Brachiosaurus or something like that. The kids, when they see the T-Rex for the first time,
or the raptors
as well. The raptors,
yeah.
Yes. So again and again, you get these big close-ups. He's been doing it since Jaws, at least.
Yeah.
With Brody on the beach. I mean, he told you exactly how to feel. Because your characters see whatever it is first. And so you're processing their response, and then you get to see it. And it's like, well, but I've already seen their response. So man, I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It's effective. Anybody getting into filmmaking would be crazy not to emulate that where appropriate. You're trying to get your audience to share these emotional moments. And that's just a really quick, efficient way to do it.
Some of the moments are sometimes the most terrifying, and what he does really well too is much like in Jaws, and is that, and we've lost it a little bit now in today's movies, is hiding things. like for Jaws, he couldn't really show the shark too much because it either didn't work or wasn't really completely finished or just wasn't great. So like not a lot of close-ups. So it had to be used very sparingly, very much so like with a lot of the dinosaurs. It's like a lot of the stuff with the T-Rex, very rarely do you see the entire T-Rex in the same shot, of doing stuff. Like it's always in a side view mirror, or it's just the head, or you're seeing the foot, or these things. And so kind of hiding some of that has a very Hitchcockian thing where your mind makes it worse than it is. And Spielberg does a great job. And I think because CGI has become so prevalent and has become so easy to do, we've gotten away from that. And so we're like, well, we can like, especially the new like Jurassic World movies. It's like, well, we can design the whole dinosaur. So we can put the whole dinosaur in this frame. And I'm like, it's not as scary as the T-Rex sequence. Like just seeing that claw kind of go on there's no tension build.
They just show you it. It's like immediately on the frame and it's doing something extraordinary. And for a moment you're like, wow, but then it's over and it's like on to the next action sequence. No, Hitchcock's a perfect example because that's exactly what this is. And one of my favorite moments of that where I'm watching it going, that's exactly how Hitchcock would have shot this, is when Nedry gets killed by that dinosaur. You see him get this spit on, but then you don't get a good look at it actually eating him. It's shot from way back and you just see the Jeep, and the Jeep's all fogged up inside and it's just shaking. And then the camera moves down to the mud pouring over that shaving cream can. And that's a very Hitchcockian way to shoot that. And there are other moments like that too that I can't recall offhand, but where he does build the tension by not showing you and just letting your imagination fill in the blanks of like how horrific Nedry getting eaten inside that Jeep really was. It's like, in my mind's eye, it's way worse than if you would have showed me.
Just for a moment, two things. Can we talk about the fact that Nedry's probably like the greatest programmer of all time, single-handedly tied like
how many million lines of code?
Yeah, million lines of code, and had everything's working. What the
There was a meme on that, right? I think there's I think there's some sort of breakdown that he actually his gripe is legitimate, like very legitimate, he is woefully underpaid. The fact that he brought that entire theme park online.
Yeah.
In the amount of time that he had to do it in.
Yeah.
Nedry's like a very tragic character.
Very tragic. Well, and
by the way, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's the other meme about Nedry where basically he just keeps wearing all the Goonies outfits. He wears
yes, that's right. Yes. I think there might be something to that.
I'm sure there
Spielberg.
Is. Yeah, it's Spielberg. I mean, because it's too close to.
By the way, do you remember when we lived in Toluca Lake and that Wayne Knight would ride his bike by our apartment?
Yep.
Just a fun aside. We never said hello or anything, but he lived in the neighborhood back behind us, I believe. And I saw him a couple times.
Yeah. Well, I think we were out smoking cigars on the balcony, I think, one time when he rode by.
There goes Nedry. Or Newman.
Yeah, it was more Newman, I think. At the time, but oh my goodness. Yeah. So what a great him and Samuel L. Jackson's interplay is just brilliant the entire way. And there's another obviously moment of Hitchcockiness of just having Samuel L. Jackson's character kind of die off screen as well, where you're like, you don't really know what happened to him. Like obviously he got eaten by a velociraptor, but like just that kind of buildup of the hand coming down, you're like, oh, that quick, like safe. And then it just, completely goes with her. And you're just like, oh no.
The scares in this movie are pretty good.
Yeah. Well,
like,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, it has just enough horror.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't ever go full tilt, but
there's so much that this movie does well. I mean, pretty much the entire movie is just done masterful.
One of my favorite characters though, and I thought he was a perfect adaptation from the book to the movie is Bob Peck as Muldoon.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty much, tonally at least, is pulled from the pages of the book. Largely the rest of the cast is pretty much too. It was impossible for me to read the book later though and not picture Goldblum as Malcolm. Like I couldn't. Yeah. Everybody else is a little more nuanced or subtle in their description, but like Goldblum was... you just can't get it out of your head. His take on
no. This is my first Goldblum movie that I can remember. So it's my introduction to him.
I was scarred as a child with with cable replays of The Fly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't see that one till later.
Yeah.
So apparently Harrison Ford was supposed to be Sam Neill's character, Dr. Grant, but he ended up turning it down.
Why on earth would he turn it down?
I don't know. Maybe he was, tired of working for Spielberg, kept roping him into Star Wars and Indiana Jones projects,
He would have done a fine job,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think Grant definitely benefits from like a lesser known actor, I guess, playing him in this case. I don't know. Ford would have done great. No doubt.
No,
but
and I think there's a gravitas that Neill gives him, not so much gravitas, but a more seriousness where Harrison kind of always has that little like boyish charm, that very like Han Solo, Indiana Jones that kind of goes in, that he had around that time.
And maybe that's what it was, that he read it and was like, man, too many people know me as Indiana Jones and Han Solo, and this is another Spielberg product and it's good, but maybe he felt like he couldn't overcome that on screen and convincing people that he's like not either of those characters. But yeah, I love Sam Neill in this. I love Sam Neill in like anything I've really ever seen him in.
He's fantastic.
So, I don't know. I just love the whole way that the character's established from the very beginning as like this old school, doesn't like technology, like all the way down to he can't even like properly use the seatbelts in the helicopter.
Just ties it and wraps it.
But he finds, it's like really cool foreshadowing, because it's like the equipment's going to break, but he's going to find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
It's really, really subtle, and I didn't realize that in the moment when I first saw the movie, or even after a couple rewatches. But now when I rewatch it again, I'm like, there's more to that decision to like focus on that of him tying them off as the solution when they're descending rapidly. Well,
I also love Attenborough's comment to him. He's just like, we'll be landed by the time you get it figured out,
Right.
It's just,
yeah.
Oh, now I'm going to talk about, you brought up the helicopter. I really want to talk about it. I think one of not my favorite moment, but one of the moments that just always hits me so hard and just shows me just how much Spielberg's a master of his craft is at the end when they're in the helicopter. You're already kind of, quieted down a little bit, and the Jurassic Park theme starts to play, and it cuts to a flight of pelicans just kind of flying. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, just safety. Like I don't know what it is about that entire scene, but it's just like going from the fantastical of dinosaurs to the regular pelicans just flying. Just there's some moment it just transcends of like a breath of release, a sigh of release, of just, we're safe, we're here, we've made it through. And it hits me I know it's coming, but every single time I watch it, I'm just like just this. Well,
that brings up a good point, because I like that moment probably doesn't give me the feels like that, but I will say I do like that this film is neatly wrapped up and without expectation of a sequel. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have that like post-credit scene or like an open-ended ending. Like, it's more or less encapsulated. It's its own thing. Obviously, we do get sequels of varying levels of okay and decent, and we could touch on that a little bit. I think The Lost World has its moments, but it was just always, honestly, it's a pretty good adaptation of the book as well. But the book just wasn't nearly as good, because I think I read that one as well. I was on a Crichton kick there in in middle school and maybe a little bit in high school.
The movies did a bunch of Crichton movies right around that time too.
And they botched a bunch of them too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Probably my Congo. And
Congo is terrible.
And Congo's like a good book. Like, it's a cool book. But my favorite book of his is Sphere, and they totally botched that movie.
It was
for whatever reason. Like, they just, I don't understand. Like, they just didn't get it. Like, the cast on paper was like, should have been great. Like, you had really crazy good cast for that movie, and it just, was terrible. But that's probably my favorite novel that is of the ones I've read. I really liked.
That one I actually haven't read, and I actually like the movie. I think it's very heavily flawed, but I actually enjoy it. So
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I think give it a read.
the book was cool, but
So, man, I love this movie. I love Jurassic Park. I still when they first see the Brachiosaurus walking, just gives me the feels every single time. The T-Rex.
I love those shots of the cup of water.
Oh, yeah, that was a huge issue. There we go. Do you like to know the story about basically what it is?
I think you can tell it again, but I think I remember that it was really tough to get it to do what they wanted it to do. Like something as simple as that ripple in the water, it just wasn't.
Yeah, so that is completely, I forget. So I think Spielberg was in his car and he like was playing some music and the bass made some sound or whatever.
Right.
And it did something. So he went to his guys and was like, I want this to do it. They're like, yeah, sure. We'll get it done. Not a problem. And then couldn't figure out how to do it. Like tried everything. Like we're getting like to the end of like, we don't know how until someone like set a glass on top of a guitar and they pluck the string and it went, and it did that. And so they actually had to like run basically strings underneath the dashboard. And so a guy was underneath to pluck it. So
my goodness.
Do it. But again, that moment, that little cup brings so much tension and so much fear of like, because you don't know what's going on. Like you'll just, yeah. And also the T-Rex sound.
And then they do the callback to it in the mud print.
Yep.
Later, because it's left. And then when it's coming back, you see it in the impression. Oh yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I also love that the T-Rex scream, roar, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely terrifying. But it's like a mixture of so many non-terrifying things. Like I think one of them's like a baby elephant. Like it's the high-pitched scream. Like that's ridiculous. Like come on, that shouldn't be scary. But they just added it all layered, and like one is like a alligator kind of talking, one's like a tiger roaring, and a couple other things. But it's just. But I know for a fact one of them is a baby elephant squeal is kind of in the mix.
It is. It sounds like a freight train.
Yeah.
Like it's
you get that volume pumping, your bass going, and when you're watching this movie, it's just absolutely
and the
terrifying.
Theater that I saw it in when the first time I watched it wasn't like some amazing thing, but I mean they had it loud enough and it blew us all away. The sound design is kind of underrated probably in this movie, to be honest. That clicky clack kind of rattle that the velociraptors make. Now obviously scientifically some of this hasn't aged that well. The raptors are like, basically the size of a little bit bigger than a chicken.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And then the T-Rex now they're realizing like the facial features may have been dramatically different from what we get, that the mouth would have probably hung way over those teeth, and then we might be talking feathers too. Like they don't quite know. So, but hey, 93.
No, you go with what works at the time.
Yeah. He would have been operating with whatever paleontology had
at that time
going for it at the time. So, by the way, you mentioned your grandfather. I've dug in the dirt out in Wyoming.
Yeah. It was
for dinos.
It was North Dakota.
It was
Montana
pretty brutal, hot, oppressive work. But I didn't find anything. My biology teacher at the time, she found the tail vertebrae of an Allosaurus.
Oh, nice.
So he had us. I was only digging like a foot or two away from her. So the paleontologist, his name was Dr. Nick Fraser from Scotland. Mm-hmm. And he was Virginia Museum of Natural History curator at the time. But yeah, he had us digging in the right place because she got to the Allosaurus tail vertebrae, and then we tracked where that was. So there was a mostly intact, at least part of an Allosaurus down in there. But
we the one in Montana, I believe we got through a Triceratops that they had found, and that was really cool. And then the guys, so my grandfather was good friends with the guys who found basically a complete intact T-Rex with 2 other T-Rexes in its stomach, like must have been just completely like encased in something or whatever. It was awesome. There's actually a documentary about it because the T-Rex is called Susie. And there was a huge battle between the government, the landowner, this guy or whatever, about who owned it, that kind of thing.
There was so much stuff at this dig site in Wyoming that they couldn't get it all out during the dry season. And he would, after, they were out there for, I don't know, a couple months in the summers when things were pretty dry, and they got out what they could. And there was some Stegosaurus. They had the plates. And then he'd have to cover it back in with loose dirt and mark it because there was just too much in there to continue to get out in time before before fall and the rain started, coming in. But yeah, it was brutal. I don't ever want to do it again.
No. I can say that I did it, and I'm happy that I did. Yeah. And now I'm not doing that.
Right.
But back to Jurassic Park and Spielberg, there was one moment I remember reading an article that was talking about, because you talked about him working on Schindler's List. So he kind of was working on both of them, but he basically finished production on Jurassic Park. And so when he was doing Schindler's List, he'd have to go in and look at the edit. And I remember him basically talking about the fact that he goes, it was some of the hardest things I had to do of working on this super important, super heavy project, and then mustering up the energy to go in for an hour into the editing bay and look at fake dinosaurs, and try to kind of get my mind into caring about this fictional story about dinosaurs, It's like, wow, man. But he still did it. He still did it.
Crushed it.
Yep. Absolutely crushed it. Love this film. If you haven't seen it. Oh, so a lot of good quotes, but one of mine is always Samuel L. Jackson's "Hold on to your butt." Hold on to your butts.
Well, and the cigarette's barely hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah. But I say that a lot, and I had taken some students that to an alternative spring break where we worked with like Habitat for Humanity, and we were in this big like 10-passenger van or 15-passenger van, and anytime I had to get onto the road really quick, I just yell out, "Hold on to your butts." None of them knew what I was talking about.
No,
I felt so old. I felt so old. I was like, man. Even when I said Jurassic Park, they're like, "Oh, I think I saw it." I'm like, oh, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, the kids these days, they're just their introductions, Chris Pratt and Jurassic World.
Doing the arms, the hands out to the velociraptors.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Nope. Inferior on all counts.
All counts. This is the far superior film.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well,
I think we should wrap it up.
We should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because this is a great film.
Well, we appreciate everybody listening to us reminisce on 1993's Jurassic Park. Fantastic piece of filmmaking by Mr. Spielberg. Love this one.
Yeah.
If you want to drop us a line, as always, you can email us at cinemaaB@gmail.com or leave us a comment on YouTube. And we will look forward to bringing you another episode of the podcast next Monday.
Woo-hoo. Thanks, everybody.